Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Elliot and welcome to This and That Reviews, where I take movies and I compare them to other movies, whether you like it or not. I'm so glad that I waited for this and that I'm getting to do them together. I saw Together, and I just came back from seeing Weapons. And I really wanted to do my reviews for Naked Gun and Together separately, because they were the other two movies that I saw, and I've just been trying to catch up on movie reviews. And Weapons just came out today, and I was so excited that my theater had a 217 premiere, because I think that's just a really cool gimmick. I was super excited to, I was so excited that my theater had a 217 premiere for this movie because or if you don't know, the main premise of this movie is the idea, or the main premise of this movie is the idea that prior to this movie beginning, so it's not a spoiler because it happens before this movie happens, and so it's told as a narration at the beginning of the movie. There is there's a grade school class where all of the kids disappeared from one lady's class at 217 the previous night, and it was just a regular day, and then all the kids just kind of like left their house and just ran off, and that is the premise of this movie. And so the idea that they had their first showing at 217 just as a wacky time is so funny to me. And it's just such great marketing. So I saw Together, and then I was going to do a review for it. And then I waited because I've been waiting to catch up on my reviews. And then I saw this movie, and I'm really excited to do them together, to do both of these back to back, and to compare them not only just to each other but to other movies as well, because I feel like a lot of I didn't like Together. I went in. There's so many similarities in things that I will say that I didn't like about that one, that I loved about this one, that I didn't like about that one, I loved about this one, and one of those things is that they both had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Both of these are like the best horror movies of the year. When Together was coming out, it debuted with 100%. It has like a 90%, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, something very high. This movie currently has like a 90 this movie in my mind. Weapons has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, with no audience score because it just came out. And so I went into both of these movies very excited, and I did not like Together. And I went into that movie really thinking, obviously, because it was getting such high reviews, that I would obviously like Together. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to dislike it. And I said this in my Superman review, where as Superman, the more I think about Superman, the more I like it. What I found when I got out of Together was I didn't like one thing, and then as I started to deconstruct the movie in my mind, I started disliking other things about the movie. And I was promoting it to my friend before I went to go see it, and then she went to go see it, and she didn't even finish the movie, and she walked out. So this is coming from somebody who, movies are subjective. My experience will not be the same as your experience. If Together sounds like an interesting movie, go watch it. But there was a lot of things that just didn't work for me. And so I'll start with that one first, and then as I move through it, I suppose I'll start comparing it to Weapons. I do like Weapons. I think that Weapons, while not being like the best of the kind of movie it is, I think that it is an experience that deserves to be seen in the same way that the other two movies that I would directly compare that to I think deserve to be seen. And the slight comparison for Weapons is Strange Darlings. If you've never seen Strange Darlings, go stop watching this and go watch Strange Darlings. It is a movie like this movie, where the less you know about the movie, the better, because it's a movie that unfolds. And but the more direct comparison that this movie is Vantage Point, with Dennis Quaid and Matthew Fox and Forrest Whitaker. I loved Vantage Point, and this and Weapons is told in the style of Vantage Point. I think the trailer would suggest that it's just a straightforward narrative, and what it actually is I want to say 6 separate people, where the movie keeps resetting itself and showing a time of events. So like it'll go from one character's like journey to a certain point, and then it'll rewind and then show a second character, and then rewind, and then it's a third character, and then rewind. That's my one complaint about Weapons, is that by the 5th character, I was like, what is happening? Like, why? How are we introducing a 5th character? And then they introduce a 6th character. And the 6th character, it's a really long story that leads into the end of the movie. Like, it all like comes to a head right there. But by the time it got to that 5th person, I literally looked at my watch and I was like, how long has this movie been going? And when it got to the 6th person, I was like, is this a 3-hour movie? And I looked up the time that the movie actually is, and it's a 2-hour movie. And it feels long. It feels long because it feels like you're progressing at such a slow rate. Like it just keeps, because of the mechanic of it, how it keeps rewinding. And that's literally the worst thing that I could say about Weapons. Everything else is great about it. To go back to Together, my problem with Together is that it tries to be a lot of things and doesn't excel at any one thing. Whereas with Weapons, I feel like it also does a lot of things, and it does all of those things really well. Now, with Together, it's trying to be a body horror movie and a relationship movie, and it's trying to be funny, and it's trying to be gross, and it's trying to be, it's trying to be like a science fiction kind of movie, and it's trying to be all of these separate things, but it doesn't quite excel at any one thing, and it definitely doesn't do any of those things remarkably well. Like, they're all kind of okay. Like, it's kind of funny, it's kind of a relationship movie, it's kind of a body horror movie, but a lot of the times it cuts away as like a stylistic choice to be funny sometimes. And so like when you come for like the gore, a lot of it, sometimes it's not there. And when you come for the like the relationship dynamic doesn't quite mesh well with the science fiction like horror dynamic. There's like a very like there's a metaphor. Like it's 2 characters that James Franco is like a high school guy. He has like that I want to be a rocker, like I want to be in a band like mentality, where his very responsible girlfriend Allison Brie, she like basically takes care of him so that he can live out his fantasy of being in a rock band. But because of that, he's very irresponsible. He's afraid of commitment, even though like Allison Brie comes off as a girl who, like they were like high school loves maybe. That's how they come off. They grew up in high school, and then they just have stayed in this relationship for like complacency. They just kind of like. It's just like a safe relationship that they're just kind of in, but she's all in and he's not really in. And so there's a mechanic in the movie where they start to like fuse together, like that idea of being, if you've seen the trailer, it's in there, and they start magnetizing towards each other. And there is a metaphor, there's a very obvious metaphor that is there, and it just doesn't work well for me. It like the relationship side, if you were to take out the science fiction side, I don't think the relationship side is that strong. And then if you just took it for the science fiction crazy side, they do a lot of cutaway and there's a lot of not anything. So if I were to split this into two movies where it does one of the sides exceedingly well, 500 Days of Summer, if you want to watch a relationship that is deteriorating over the course of a movie, a relationship that you want to like save and it's slowly deteriorating. It is a commentary on a bad relationship. Or if you want to see like the science fiction side, The Substance. The Substance is insane. The Substance is fucking crazy. And I feel like in those two movies, they do the one specific thing that they're trying to do very, very well. You don't need to have everything. You don't need to be good at everything. It's better if you're good at everything. I think that Weapons is good at everything. I'm not saying don't be good at everything. Don't be good at all of the genres that you're trying to hit. But if you can't hit the one thing, hit one of the things really, really well. John Wick is not a great story. If you take the original John Wick, it is literally a mobster kills a guy's dog and he then proceeds to track down everybody and kill them. That's the story. You can't make that a bigger story than it is. That is literally the plot of John Wick 1, and it's fucking amazing. It's amazing because it revolutionized, it did action so well that now when you watch movies, Back in Action, go watch the movie Back in Action on Netflix. It's with Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz. When you watch the airport or the airplane scene, just fast forward through the movie, get to them on the airplane. It's in the beginning of the movie. I think it's the opening scene of the movie. But when you watch that scene, it's John Wick coded like to a T. It like Cameron Diaz even does the gun flick. John Wick revolutionized action so well that they can do a 3-hour John Wick 4 that has basically no story and just balls out like long action sequences, and you don't care. You don't care that it doesn't have that strong of a story. You don't care about the discrepancies in the lore. You don't care about anything. It doesn't matter. The action is so good that it overwrites everything else. With Together, it doesn't excel at being good at any one specific thing. It's not gross enough to be good to warrant somebody who likes watching gross stuff to say, oh, you gotta watch this movie. It's not a good relationship movie because I feel like, you know what it feels like? You know what the movie felt like? It feels like Alison Brie and James Franco wanted to make a movie, an indie movie about a couple and their relationship. That's it. That's what it feels like. It feels like that's really what they wanted to do. They were like, we were a real couple in real life. We want to make a movie about a relationship. And the studio was like, that sounds really boring. We're not going to greenlight this. And they're like, how about you add, science fiction in it? Why don't you add some weird horror thing and then we'll sell it as a horror movie and not an indie independent movie about a relationship with two people talking in a house. And they're like, I guess we can do that. And so they just smush in a horror aspect into this relationship talky movie. And it just doesn't work, because now you have to split the relationship talking with, now you have to set up this horror aspect, and you need to create a backstory, and you need to create things, and so now you're doing two halves of movies, and neither half is worth it for a full movie. So you push two halves together, and it's just kind of an okay movie, and that's how I felt about it. You know what's funny, and I'm gonna go into spoilers here, so if you don't want to watch, or if you don't want spoilers, sorry, I don't know. Part of me wants to like hold up something, and so, okay, here, I'll hold this up. This will be in the bottom corner of the screen, and when I take this away, I will have switched to weapons, and then I'll start talking about weapons. Okay. What's funny about this movie is that a lot of the reviewers that I was watching, John Campea, not Christian Harloff, Sean Chandler, they disliked the end of the movie. And so when I was getting to what was obviously the end of the movie, I was like, oh, I get it. They dislike this movie because the villain is doing his villain monologue and over-explaining like what this weird cult is. Oh, I get it. That's what they hated. And then the movie kept going, and then it was like, oh, I get it. They probably disliked the fact that the solution to all of this is suicide. That's a really big thing that a lot of people dislike in a lot of different movies. Lights Out. There was that movie about the mirror dimension. I forget what it is. I never saw. Oh, Woman in the Yard. A lot of people hated that about Woman in the Yard. So they probably hated the idea that the solution to all of this is suicide. Oh, no, it's still going. Oh, I get it. This is kind of a weird ending where the idea that they were going to beat the thing, now they're fusing together, and now you're doing some weird To Become One Spice Girls song as a weird callback, as like a funny callback to this, to the previous thing. They probably hated this. And then it got to the actual ending where it becomes, where they've now morphed into a different actor, a non-gender specific actor, somebody who kind of looks like a guy, kind of looks like a girl, and that I was like, okay, it was probably this, because this is incredibly strange and a weird note to end on. I thought that they would look like James Franco and Alison Brie. I mean, I don't know how I thought this would end, but it certainly wasn't this. And you get to the ending, and you get that as your last image before you have to walk out of that theater, and you're like, is this movie an entire metaphor for something? Or is it just dumb? And I think that it's just dumb. I don't think, it feels like I'm trying to make more out of this movie than they even thought about with this movie. I don't know if the people creating this movie were smart enough to be talking about like gender roles, or like the idea of a non-binary person, or the idea of codependency. I don't think that message was strong enough in this movie. I don't even know if that is a message that they were even intending in this movie. Like, the fact that I don't know if any of this is the reason why this movie even exists is why I dislike this movie. It doesn't do enough to be it doesn't do enough to be a gross movie. It's not clever enough to be a relationship great movie, like a real discussion into relationships, because it also has to talk about the horror aspect. And don't even get me started on the unnecessary dream sequences. The dream sequences in this movie confused me. And the moment that I knew that it confused me, and this is another spoiler, When it got to the hair scene, I didn't even think that that was real. They had two separate dream sequences where he wakes up and it's a dream, and it's weird things happen, and then he wakes up and it's a dream. And then there's this situation with the hair thing, and I was convinced that that wasn't really happening and that that was a dream, only to find out a scene later that it did happen. And then I had to be post-scared about that moment. I had to be scared after the fact. I don't like it. I didn't like it. Nothing about it worked for me. And the more I think about it, the more I dislike it. As opposed to Weapons. And this is going to be a quick review because I don't want to spoil it. And I want you to go watch Weapons. I will say that in saying that the dream sequence in Together was probably the worst thing that you could do for that movie, the dream sequences in Weapons are some of the best dream sequences that I've ever seen in any movie. Dream sequences in movies, in horror movies, are normally used to sell a trailer. You can do whatever you want in a dream sequence. You can be as crazy as you want. You can kill off your main character in a dream sequence, because then that character just wakes up and, that was crazy. What a crazy dream. And it does a couple of things. It reminds the audience that you're watching a horror movie when a horror stuff isn't going to happen for a while because we haven't gotten there yet. So you can do a dream sequence early on in the movie to remind your audience that you're in a horror movie. And two, you can put that moment in the trailer and people will just think that's a real scene in this movie. And it technically is, but it's definitely not. The dream sequences in Weapons not only affect the plot, but it's something that is like, it's not just, it doesn't, neither of the two dream sequences ever feel cheap. You always feel like you're getting a little bit more information from this big puzzle that is Weapons. Weapons is a puzzle. It is a puzzle in the way that Vantage Point is. If you haven't seen Vantage Point, go watch Vantage Point. Go watch Vantage Point before you go watch Weapons, and I think you'll be better prepared for the rewinding that this movie does. Because it took me a little while to like realize that it's literally just Vantage Point. But the idea of Vantage Point is that at a presidential summit, a bomb goes off. That's it. And there's no other way to describe the movie. You just have to experience it and watch it. Because what the movie is, when you're watching it, is different people's vantage point. And so you get to see the news crew. And, like you get invested into the news crew story. And then, the bomb goes off and then it rewinds. And then you get to watch, somebody else that's there. Some eyes on the ground kind of person. Some Forrest Whitaker, he's just like using his video camera. And he's, you get to watch the events through his eyes. And then, it gets, the bomb goes off and then it rewinds again. And you get to see just a little bit more every single time. And then, and you get a little bit more clues every single time. And that is exactly what Weapons is. Weapons also doesn't spoon feed you everything. Not everything is explicitly stated. You just kind of have to assume some of the things. One of the things in this movie that I will spoil because it doesn't matter, one of the things is who writes which on her car. The main character, a lot of people in the town don't like her. And one of the things is somebody writes which in paint on her car. That is not explicitly stated, but if you watch the movie, you can figure that out. You can pretty much figure that out. And it's not explicitly stated, but it's kind of obvious, and it's not a big thing. Like, it doesn't matter. So they don't overly explain everything. It's not as tight as Vantage Point, which is why I think of the three movies, like Strange Darlings, Vantage Point, and this, I think that this is last on that list, but it's such a limited list of weird, out of order movies. I guess Memento would also be on this list. Memento's a weird movie that utilizes like out of order moviness. But it's such a limited list that it's still a good watch, and I still like this movie. It manages to be funny, and it manages to be funny in a way that Together was trying to be funny, and it undercut things in that movie. I feel like you should, like, the relationship side of that movie, of Together, should be more serious, and they undercut a lot of it because the characters say things to each other. And I feel like with this movie, there are moments that very much remind me of Signs. Like, a lot of this movie reminds me of Signs in the way that Signs is a very, like, tense movie. Like, I came out of this movie and I was like, ugh, ugh. Like, I was just, like, out of breath. Like, I was so tense within this movie. And like, but at the same time, you get like a moment in Signs where they're running around the house and he's like, I'm insane with anger. Like, just run around, just yell, just go crazy. Say, and he starts running and he's like, I'm insane with anger. And like, that's such a funny moment because it's such a ridiculous moment, because it's such a ridiculous scenario. That's the kind of humor that's in this movie. There are some things that are just so ridiculous. There's a joke in here that feels like it would have been in Naked Gun. It's at the end of the movie, and you'll know what it is. But if you want the spoiler without context, and it feels straight out of Naked Gun. I was like, am I watching Naked Gun right now? And it's so good. It's so funny. And yet that whole end sequence is incredibly tense as well. And yet not only that one, but there's another thing that's really funny. The end scene, the third act of this movie is worth the price of admission. It's so good and it's so strong that it pays off how long this movie feels. This movie is like, it feels like it's inching towards a finish line every single time it resets. And it feels like you just keep getting a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And by the ending, like when you realize everything that's happening and the ending plays out, it's great. I feel like you can't deny that this movie is great. This movie hinges everything on the ending. In the same way that a serial killer movie, like a teen slasher movie, it hinges on that reveal. And if that reveal is stupid, most of the movie will feel useless. The ending to this movie is so strong that for the ending alone, I would recommend people watch this movie. There are moments, I've seen a lot of horror movies, a large quantity of horror movies, and there are scenes in this movie that genuinely scared me. There is a scene, spoiler without context, there is a scene where a lady is asleep in her car, and that scene scared me. That scene scared the crap out of me. I was so afraid. And it's such a simple scene, and it's such a simple setup, but the camera work and the no sound, and like, because I think when there's like a horror moment, like it can go cheesy into ridiculous sound, like the like, and that undercuts what's happening. And I think the fact that there was no sound or very little sound was so scary. Like when you can kind of feel, you could not be watching a horror movie. Like you could have your eyes blind. You can have your eyes covered and you can hear the sound and know when the moment is going to happen. When they do the, like the right, like you can hear the music, that like stinger, like that drop, and then like you know when that's gonna happen. But what happens when there's no sound? Then you don't know what's gonna happen. And when you can't see very well and you have no idea, like you can see enough, it was just a brilliantly crafted scene. Like just that sequence alone, I was sold on the movie. When that happened in the first act of this movie, when there is a lady asleep in a car, when that happened, I was like, I'm sold on this movie. I don't even care where this movie goes. I was like, this movie is already better than Together. I think that because this movie is because it's such a uniquely told movie, I think a lot of people are gonna remember this movie way more than movies like Together, way more than movies that are just generically structured. The simple structural change of this movie is what people will remember, and it's not in any of the marketing. And I feel the need to tell you at least that, and I feel like you should just watch the movie and enjoy it. I don't even want to spoil any more of it. Go watch this movie. It's great.